Welcome to Sew and Save's first ever ruler work virtual class. I'm here to share my love for ruler work and have fun while practicing with the Westalee 12-inch arc ruler. I'm Valerie and I'm excited to share what I have learned and some of the tricks I've picked up along the way. I have been doing ruler work for a very short time and due to the pandemic have learned this completely through virtual education. I have very limited knowledge of sewing machines and I will have to count on Susan to provide help with sewing machine specific questions or concerns. I've used my Janome 9450 which comes with ruler foot and has ruler work settings. This has made it very easy to get started and jump right into lots of different projects. You can be successful with a few tools. I listed some as required and others I'm sure you will want once you've tried ruler work and see what you can accomplish. My first project was quilted with only this Westalee 12-inch arc ruler. I set up my machine with instructions from the sewing machine manual and I quilted a full-size quilt. I stitched what I would describe as wonky stars all over the quilt. I would not recommend this for your first project. And I would do so many things different now. But my point is that you don't have to have a lot to make this a success. Hopefully you already have picked up your fabric and or your kit and you're ready to go. With the fabric, with your colored fabric, you're going to want to cut your 3 9-inch squares. So we've got 3 9-inch squares. You'll have a piece of fabric left over, and with that piece of fabric I'd like you to cut 2 1 5/8 inch pieces of fabric and 2 1-inch wide pieces of fabric. You can use the width of the remaining amount of fabric that was left. And we've got those cut. So those are the back and your joining pieces for your quilt as you go in for part of lesson 4. Your cone of cotton, you need 3 pieces, or you cut 3 9-inch squares for your front. They're all exactly 9-inch squares. You can use your ruler to get that done, and they will be the back. You will do the same thing. You will cut your 9-inch squares from your thin quilt batting. Now we can assemble each of them today. You can have one today and do your next one next week if you like, but you want to put your fabric face down, your quilt batting, and your cone of cotton face up. At this point, I'm going to go to the ironing board. I'm going to use my best press and press it and make sure it's nice and flat. Okay, now we have to mark a 6-inch block in the middle of the hair. So we need to mark the outside edges of that 6 inches. So the easiest way for me is to find the center of the block. I have sprayed this twice with best press and I am using a friction marker. So got a 9-inch square, middle of that square will be 4.5 inches. So I've got that there. I'm sure you can hardly see it. We could use this ruler and mark it in the center of that, put that 3, so we've got 3 inches in. I'm using these as extra. I'm going to go from 6, go nice and light with the marker because sometimes it doesn't wash out. For this project I'm not too concerned. I want to be able to see the line, and I want you to be able to see the line. So I'm going to do the other side of that 6-inch square. I'm at my 6 inches here, 6 inches here, 3 is right on the center. Okay, I have a 6-inch line marked on the block. You will have to do this for each of the 3 blocks, so feel free to, if you want to go ahead and get that done before the other classes, that'd be fine, because I probably will not go over that. I will have that marked and we can jump right into the stitching. So got the 6-inch block in the middle. Okay, before we go over to the sewing machine, I was going to do a quick review of our ruler here. The ruler came with the stable tape. This was recommended to put 2 on the top and 3 across the bottom so that when you press down, it has a good firm grip on your fabric. I want to just go over the lines. The lines are 1/4 of an inch apart. For the first block that we're going to be stitching, we're going to be using, I'll refer to, this is the first line and this is the second line, and this would be edge of the ruler. If you stitch along the edge of the ruler with your ruler foot, you will have a stitch line that is 1/4 of an inch from your original stitching. If you stitch on, if you have your row of stitching and you put the first line on it with the measurement here of 1/4 inch and your ruler foot, your stitching lines will be a 1/2 inch apart. And of course, you're adding another 1/4 of an inch, you have 3/4 of an inch. We will be doing 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch for our fabric as well as along the ruler line. And I know it will be hard to see, that's why I use the purple behind it, so you can see those lines. You'll have your ruler in front of you, so you'll be able to see what we're saying. But that's the first line. I consider that the first line, second line, and third line. And when I said we put the first line, that would be directly on top of stitching to get, and with the ruler foot you would have a 1/2 inch. Okay, now we'll go over to the sewing machine and get started stitching. Okay, we are over here at the sewing machine. Just want to make sure we have everything set up. We've got our grid glider on. We have our sewing machine set up for ruler work quilting, or if you don't have ruler work quilting as a setting, you can set your machine up for free motion quilting. So the feed dogs are down. I put a new needle in, and I am going to start in one corner. It doesn't matter which corner I'm in. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my thread. Go ahead with the tweezers, pull up your bobbin thread. You want to make sure you have your threads pulled and hang on to them when you get started, because you'll end up with a nested mess in the back. I am putting the needle directly in that corner. You want to have your speed set, I like about middle of for speed setting. It gives you a good opportunity to move along, but not too fast, not too slow. You want to be able to put the foot to the pedal to the metal, as they say, so that you don't have to worry about that as a factor. So slow your machine down to where you're comfortable with. You want your hands nice and flat on your machine, or on your table, and relaxed. My presser foot, or ruler foot in this case, is right up against that ruler, and the block is 6 inches, the ruler is 6 inches, so we should be able to do it. I, on lots of times, will like to go up here so that I have it. I'm going to have to stop and start again. And I want to make sure I'm just that 1/4 of an inch. My ruler is 1/4 of an inch. This spacing gauge keeps that ruler straight to the line and keeps me marked at 1/4 of an inch. Like I said, we're going to use it a lot in the second block, but you can definitely practice a little here to get started in the first block. And let's get started. Okay, I'm going to stop, needle down, and I'm going to move my ruler. Again, I can use my spacing gauge. I'm right on. I'm going to stitch right to the corner, and I'm going to stop, needle down. I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to turn the fabric because it's going to be easier for me to go around. The beauty with ruler work is I could keep the fabric going the same direction the whole time. but for ease of getting started here, and I can switch this pretty easily, see what I'm doing, be comfortable with the ruler in the hand. I prefer to have it in my left hand, but you will want to practice right hand, left hand, so that you can do both sides of the line. Guilty of pulling my hands up and being tense. Try and keep them flat and relaxed. Good habits to start with are make life easier down the road for sure. In your written instructions, it did say that we will be going around this block twice. Stitching around the block twice. So I got 2 sides done. You can see why I love my little spacing gauge. You do need it. Okay, I jumped a little one stitch there, but it'll be fine. Keep going. The reason we're going two rows around here is to give us a base, so that when we're doing our pattern, we'll have to travel, and we want to have a place where we can travel and no one's going to know we're traveling. You can see I was 1 stitch off, and I wasn't happy with that, so I just moved it ahead. So now I'm lined up, and I'm just going to re-stitch, do a second row of stitching over top of the first row. Gives you a good opportunity to practice going slow, staying on that line. You've got your ruler. Gives you a nice defined line to stitch onto, or to have as the outside of the block as well. Whoops. What I did there is I didn't keep my hands still until the machine was stopped and the needle came up. So our needle is down. So you want to make sure you keep your hands solid while until the needle is stopped and down, so that you can continue on. So I'm going to finish along here, which will take me back to the corner. You might notice too, I think there I was pushing down and I had my grippy on the tape, which is, I want to make sure I'm using these 3 pieces of staple tape to hold the fabric and move the fabric. So I'm back to my starting spot. See these, my threads are there. You might notice too, in my sample, I had used the cream colored thread, which was tone on tone. I thought that was very elegant looking. The advantage for me to use the green is you can see better on camera where my stitching is, where my stitching lines are, and you can follow along. So we're in the corner. The first row is 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to travel across this first row of stitching 3/4 of an inch. There is no 3/4 of an inch on that. We have a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. So we're going to have to just eyeball it. We don't want to go the full inch, so I'll just lay that for nice and slow. You can do it freehand. You can also put your ruler here. But at this point, I want to make sure I have the second line of stitching right on top of that line. I believe I went 1 stitch too far, so I want to make sure that the second line is right on top of that border that we've just stitched. So I'm going to stitch straight down. I can see my line is all the way down. I got it placed there, and I can reach without having to readjust, and I can go. So it's stopping right on your line, your already stitched line, and needle down. The next row is 1/4 of an inch. So, excuse me. So for 1/4 inch, we need to have your ruler foot butting up against the edge of the ruler or right on top of that line of stitching. So you can use your eye to just see, I'm going to travel across, and I'm going to stop, and I can see the edge of the foot there, and I can see my line of stitching. I end up standing up a little bit, looking over just to make sure I've got that edge all the way along there. And when you're at this point, I'm making a 1/4 inch separation, but it does line up exactly 1 inch from that line, or from your first row of stitching, and so you can use that third line and put it on top of that row of stitching. So you have a double way of checking, and that's what the beauty of ruler work is, that with the 1/4 inch and everything's exact. You can check in multiple areas. Okay, there is, at this point, you can stitch. I am stitching backwards, which is not my preferred way of stitching, but if I was on a big quilt, that'd be really handy. I'm going to again travel over because my next row of stitching is 1/4 inch. So again, I'm going to put that ruler on, place it down, right on the row of stitching. And you can see I jumped a little bit there when I was going backwards, because that's not my best way. So you can turn your block around. I can easily go back and rip that stitch out and do that row again. I am going to keep going because I don't want you to have to watch me rip it out, but I will fix it. So now we're going, again, we're making a 1 inch. So we're going to put the ruler here, and we're going to go 1 inch, and this corner of this stitch is going to be where I would like the needle to be. Not the ruler foot, the needle. Okay, I'm going to put the ruler on this side because I want to bring the sewing machine towards me in a more natural way, and hopefully I won't jump. This time we're using the third line on the ruler to make that 1 inch. So you've got 3/4 of an inch of the ruler there, and then your 1/4 inch on your ruler foot. I'm going to travel over 1/4 of an inch. Ruler foot is butting up against my row of stitching. I'm going to put my ruler, excuse me, right on top of my stitching, and so we're going to do another 1 inch, so you can use your ruler as well. If you see, these lines are marked at 1/2 inches. So if you go from this, I've lined this line up with my needle. I'm going to stitch to this line using my ruler foot this time. Or excuse me, using my ruler as my guide instead of the spacing gauge. Again, remember we're using the center of the needle. Third line on your ruler is going on top of the stitching. This is 1/4 inch. Oh, I think I went 1 stitch too far on that one. Beauty of it, I just pop it back over a little bit, and that's why we had those extra rows there, so you can't see those rows extra stitches there. Hands are relaxed. Ruler is on top of my stitching. And we're going to do 1 inch again. Want to make sure I'm on that line. I've got the ruler on the opposite side this time. You do end up with your favorite hand side, so I just always try and challenge myself with switching it up. Again, I'm about 1 stitch too far. How's that going to affect me at the end? I'm going to be a little closer than I want to be. Drop my gauge there off the edge. We're doing 2/4 inch. So now we have 2 ways to measure this row of stitching. I'd like it, I want that third row to be 3/4 of an inch, so I could place this second line on that row of stitching, or I can measure over 1/4 inch from this row of stitching. So double check, just make sure you've got your 1 inch there. I'm going to do it 1 stitch extra towards the edge, because that will make it exactly the 3/4 of an inch there. It's just one way to make sure you end up where you wanted that row of stitching to be. You can budget a little bit. So I would say I'm a little bit farther on from this row of stitching, but it's going to end up looking just great. End it in the corner, needle down, slide your, I want to bring up that bobbin thread. Oops, I'm sorry, jumped on me a little bit there. Again, I love my little tweezers. Got my bobbin thread up, and I've got a nice long piece of bobbin thread that I'm going to leave it underneath, so that when I start my next row of stitching, I have lots to hold on to and I'm not short. Okay. Very easy pattern, just back and forth with straight lines. It could have been modified at any point by changing the width of those designs. I used paper and pencil to get started. Practiced out or penciled in exactly how I thought I'd like the square to look. I have it as my pattern that I had here on the side. So then, and then just for added notes, I put on which line I wanted to use, so there was no question. And we got that first block all sewn together. Okay, exciting news here. Susan has provided us, and will provide to you, anyone who posts on this Facebook page, your picture of your block. The first time you post your picture, she's going to give you a package of these needles, these self-threading needles, and how exciting. I just snipped mine open there. She just gave me mine. I'm not sure if she's giving them for posting, or whether she's given them to you to entice you to stick with us and get this project through. So these self-threading needles work awesome. So you take your, here I am. Yeah, you can tell I'm not used to cameras. Thread your needle. Okay, so you thread your needle from the bottom. You slide your needle into between your 2 layers of fabric. You want to get it into the quilt batting. Slide it in through there. And like, I usually don't worry about pulling it with my needle, because I don't want the thread to unthread, and I don't want to break my needle. Pull it up. Threads are buried. We've got both sides quilted, and that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being patient with me as I learn how to do this and to work with the camera. Have a great day.